Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just okay. At the outset, I'd like to thank the organizer, in particular, Ram Mohan, for in constant touch with the program, and also Dr. Ramya for your kind introduction. But the program is always a big, especially with the digital, it becomes much more difficult. That's why I want to thank everybody. That's why this is a message I want to carry from the one of the kirtanas of Tyagaraja Kirtanas. Endaro Mahanubhavulo Andariki Vandamulo. From my deep inside, from my heart, I salute all the greats who are there. To start with, I think topic has been aptly placed. Management of a CAH girl. Even the first description of a CAH came from a girl only. This was way back in 1865 in Italy, wherein autopsy of one person known as a Marzo, who had a 6 centimeters long phallus with a first grade hypospadiasis, had no testes, normal vagina, uterus, tubes, and ovaries. Adrenal glands were hugely enlarged. He was considered female at birth, but at the age of 4 years, he was changed to the male. He was typical male in all aspects. He had many episodes of vomiting and diarrhea, probably the adrenal crisis, and there was no good treatment those days. Hence, he died at 40s from one such of episodes. So this is the first description of a CAH which is available. So probably relating to the female. We know that there are mainly two major classification when it comes to the management. Classic CAH, which is salt wasting, which needs to be more and more attention. Simple virilizing has equally attention for the other things. Non-classic CAH, probably we may diagnose at the later stage. They won't be presenting with much clinical problems. But what has been suggested offline is a new classification which has been suggested, that is classic CAH, wherein we find a cortisol deficiency or even a deficiency of a cortisol and aldosterone, and a non-classic CAH wherein normal cortisol levels are a partial cortisol deficiency. So this is probably a new classification which will start appearing, and also with more and more genetic tests being done. There is one genotype classification, what we call it as a group null, group A, group B, and a group C, wherein based on the enzyme activity, you classify the CAH. The group null, wherein enzyme activity is close to 0 with aldosterone deficiency. Group A is when enzyme activity is less than 2% with aldosterone deficiency and a salt wasting. Group B is a one little activity is there of enzymes between 2 to 10%. There is some amount of a normalcy in aldosterone. Mainly they present with the virilizing features. Group C, good amount of enzyme activity to the tune of 75%. And mainly they present as a non-classic CAH, what we see in adolescent girls. So this is a genotype classification. Probably will be using much more and more with more and more testing what we are conducting nowadays. But there are lots of issues when it comes to the CAH. Managing CAH is not as simple as Addison's what we see in the counterpart. It is much more complex than the Addison's disease, as there is deficiency of both glucocorticoid plus or minus mineralocorticoid, but much more than this will be dealing with an androgen excess, and balancing the two becomes the most challenging job for most treating doctors. This is the one child which was reared as a male, but only they realized at the age of 6 or 7 years, she is just growing tall, and also she didn't have testicles in the scrotum. For that, she was taken to the hospital, and subsequently she was referred to our center, and we found that she was a female patient with a CAH. This is a story of most CAH if it is neglected or not properly detected at the birth. So goals of management in girls being: replace the deficient steroids, minimize adrenal androgens and the glucocorticoid excess because of the therapy, prevent virilization, optimize growth, and protect the potential fertility of the future. We know that these are quite idealistic and not always practicable in day-to-day practice, and most of the treatment suggestion which has come from the guidelines is mainly based on the clinical experience rather than the hardcore evidence. These are the outcomes of a disease or a disease-related or even both in a patients with a CAH, wherein you can see that if there is a blue color is there, that is mainly a disease related. If it is a red, it is a treatment related. If it is brown, it is combination of both. So hypothalamo-pituitary, they may present with early pituitary or a secondary gonadal failure, cardiovascular disease, mainly an abnormal cardiac structure with the blood pressure and the future risk of a CAD. They can present with the insulin resistance and the future GDM and the type 2 diabetes, adrenal, huge tumors, sometimes even epinephrine deficiencies. They will be having a increased fat mass, mainly treatment related rather than the disease related. There's some amount of a bone health issue, mainly because of the glucocorticoid excess and the type of a glucocorticoid we use for treating the patient. There are some amount of a androgenation exposure, both intrauterine and also following the delivery, so that there will be some amount of a brain effect of the androgenation. They can have a hyperpigmentation, striae and thinning because of the treatment. Many patients do have a reproductive issues that becomes altogether thing, and the musculoskeletal issues are also quite common, and the myopathy being the common because of the treatment issues. These are some of the disease related and the treatment related, or both related to the CAH when it comes to the management of a child throughout her lifespan. The mainstay of a treatment in a patient with a CAH is a glucocorticoid replacement. Lifelong glucocorticoid replacement is the mainstay of a therapy in a patient with a CAH. We have got a different glucocorticoids for a use, most ideal being the hydrocortisone. In some, we may use even a prednisolone, but try not to use dexamethasone in any patient. The treatment of a CAH is quite complex. There is an androgen excess and a steroid excess. This picture aptly represents the both. This is a young boy protecting his brother from falling from the bicycle. Meanwhile, even his pant is getting loosened from his waist. So he has a two option: protecting himself or protecting his his brother. So I think this is what happens with most patients with the CAH when we manage in a day-to-day practice in the outpatient. There is an androgen excess or a glucocorticoid excess. Both have got its own effect on the patient's current and the future problems. So we have to do what is known as a balancing act between these two undesirable states, and overall the management is fought with quite difficulties, and most patients are not happy compared to the patients who have got a Addison's disease. So the glucocorticoid replacement should mimic the circadian rhythm. We need to give a more in the afternoon, more in the morning, less in the afternoon, least in the night, and we have to increase the dosage as per the patient's in between intercurrent illnesses. We have to substitute the missing hormones, both glucocorticoid with or without mineralocorticoid. We have to suppress the excess androgen which are coming from the adrenals. Probably most patients end up receiving little more than what is required glucocorticoids, and the treatment remains quite challenging. So there is no evidence-based proper guidelines for it. The substitution of the glucocorticoid is tailor-made to the patient needs. That's why the regime changes. Though there is a recommendation, the regime changes from one patient to the other patient, and in the same patient at the different phases of the life. So hydrocortisone remains the treatment of choice, not only in girls, in all individuals, preferably throughout the life, but at least mandatorily use it in children. Occasionally, prednisolone may be used. That's only a special situations. Hydrocortisone needs to be given 3 times daily. Earlier, we used to have oral suspensions of hydrocortisone. They are not recommended because they are not quite appropriate when it comes to the dosages. We should follow a circadian rhythm wherein the more dosage has to be given in the morning, less in the afternoon, and the least in the night. And a typical dosing involves 10 to 15 milligram per square meter body surface area, 2 to 3 divided doses based on the patient's problem. This is what we expect to see when we replace. This is the cortisol day curves, and you can see beautifully the suppression of the 17-OHP. What are the problems? Sorry. There is insufficient suppression of the ACTH in the morning. Hence, there is more drive to produce androgens and 17-OHP. Hence, most glucocorticoid we need to use potent like a prednisolone, sometimes rarely even a dexamethasone to blunt this ACTH rise. Hydrocortisone being this anti-androgen property is not as good as a prednisolone or a dexamethasone. Hence, in some patients, we end up giving small dose of a prednisolone to suppress this excess androgens. There is one entity known as a reverse circadian rhythm, which was quite popular nearly a decade or two earlier. Generally, it is not recommended because you end up over treating the patient rather than treating appropriately. How to monitor glucocorticoid therapy? I think it is mainly clinical examination, then supported by the lab. We have to interpret the lab findings together with the patient's clinical picture, and most of the laboratory reports carry a challenge on its own. In the mineralocorticoids, we need to use in the dosage of 50 microgram to 200 microgram per day. We need to monitor patient's blood pressure, edema, serum electrolytes, if possible, even the plasma renin activity to optimize mineralocorticoid. Addition of a mineralocorticoid is mandatory in a salt wasting category. It is also recommended in the simple virilizing because it makes life of the patient quite better, and also the glucocorticoid requirement comes down. Stress response is the most important. Most patients with CAH, we need to teach them regarding the stress dosing of the glucocorticoid during their illness. And like Addison's disease, give them a special card. Many a times, the CAH may not be understood by the general physician or in the periphery. You write Addison and give, it becomes a much easier to manage these kids. So this was actually what has been given by the books. But we did a study in 2019 wherein we had an adrenal symposium. Almost all endocrinologists across India attended this session. In their questionnaire-based survey we did when it comes to the management of a CAH in that conference. This was mainly carried out by our two brilliant colleagues, Dr. Nandini and Nalini. So what they did was they wanted to assess the current practices among endocrinologists in the management of children with a CAH. It was mainly based on the questionnaire regarding the management of CAH in their day-to-day practice. This questionnaire was given to 150 endocrinologists. 52 of them participated in the survey and they replied their management questions. That's quite only 1/3. Probably, I think they were actively involved in the management of CAH in the children. 63% of these 52 endocrinologists, they reported they are managing children with CAH independently. This was both pediatric and adult. Nearly 2/3 reported that they are managing independently. Another 15%, they told that, yes, they are managing in collaboration with a pediatrician or a pediatric endocrinologist. And whatever the dosage they mentioned was anywhere between 10 to 30 milligram per square meter per day. Means almost many are using as recommended dosage, little more based on the day-to-day practice. This was the dose of a hydrocortisone, which was used by the 52 respondent endocrinologists. Infancy, the dosage was more. As they moved to childhood and adolescent, the dosage per kg per meter square body came down. As child is growing, the requirement does come down in the as per the body weight. Dose of a fludrocortisone almost remained same. Most patients were using anywhere between 100 to 150 micrograms. Then comes the flip. Till almost 8% of them reported using dexamethasone. The most guidelines suggest not to be used in the children. Yes, it was necessary in some kids to use a dexamethasone. That's what they told. 8% were using a dexamethasone. Nearly 44% were using prednisolone. Together, 50% were using the glucocorticoids, which were quite potent and have issues in the future, bone and also other health issues. 11% told they're using a combination of a steroid, like a hydrocortisone and a small dose of a prednisolone, and close to 40% were only using the hydrocortisone. Means, though the recommendation is there to use hydrocortisone across, These were all the endocrinologists who were practicing from so many years. They used in less than 50% of the patients, only hydrocortisone was used, probably because of the availability, even about the knowledge, and also the cost dictated them to use the other thing. And to our surprise, nearly 1/3 of the endocrinologists were using inverse dosing. They were giving little higher dose in the night to overcome the androgen excess. This was the practicability of the guidelines which were suggested, and we found that majority were sticking to guidelines, but the use of dexamethasone and the prednisolone mandate the patient's need. Anybody can decode? This is a coded. Anybody can decode. Can I volunteer? Anybody? Oh, this is not open for students. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is what I want to say when it comes to the management. Clinical judgment is a gold standard. Most important is clinical judgment you have to make when it comes to the management. So you take a clinical judgment, use biochemical parameters as an additional guidance. Don't weigh other way around. Don't base everything on the biochemistry and take a clinical decision. Decide clinically, then use lab parameters for your additional guidance. So the monitoring is the most important. It is only a snapshot of the disease control. Most of the time, if patient is taking hydrocortisone in a circadian rhythm, we like to take their 17-OHP 2 hours after the morning intake of the hydrocortisone. When you attempt to normalize the 17-OHP as per the lab standard, you end up over-treating, which should not be attempted. Try to keep 3 to 4 times above the upper limit of the lab range, probably between 4 to 10 would be most ideal. Androstenedione, if possible, yes, use it. If it is a marker of a under treatment, and if androstenedione is increased, probably you are under treating the patient. We have to adjust upwards the treatment. And there's an entity known as a DHEAS. It is like a HbA1c of a CAH. This tells whether the patient is compliant or not. So if DHEAS is not suppressed, it tells that patient is not a compliance, lower drug exposure. Hence, we can appropriately take steps to correct the compliance. Whether we need to bother about the other parameters? Yes. Height and precocity is one of the issues. If possible, I think height enhancing therapy with the growth hormone can be tried. If there is a precocity following a therapy, we need to use a LHRH agonist to reduce the progression of the precocity. Genital reconstruction, both high and low, need to be attended early. Probably there is a lot of confusion from the past 2 years following a judgment from a Madras High Court. Our surgeons are concerned about that judgment, and there is some amount of confusion among the surgeons. What happens if you don't optimize the therapy in a patient with a CAH? They end up having an adrenocortical hyperplasia in the long run. There'll be almost huge tumors you see, and we have to take out 23 centimeter long adrenal lipomyoma in an adult patient with a CAH earlier. And most of the time, most patients with a CAH will be having some amount of hyperplasia, and up to 80% it is noticed by CT or MRI. Quality of life is not good across the patients with a CAH when you compare with the Addisons. Bone health is a major issue. Probably if you are using more of a dexamethasone and prednisolone, and their height is much less than what has been predicted, and they remain on the lower side, and there is some amount of effect on the BMD based on the glucocorticoid use. They are at a higher risk of a cardiometabolic system diseases like diabetes, dyslipidemia, hypertension, and a CV morbidity and a mortality. And also in the future, there's a risk of a gestational diabetes. There are like a TARTs in the males. There is some amount of literature about ovarian adrenal tumors, but it is quite rarely seen compared to the testicular breast tumors. LOCA is the one which will be most of the time entertaining when the adolescent girl comes with the hirsutism, acne, and the menstrual irregularities. We need to make a diagnosis based on the actin prolongatum or a synactin stimulation test. Treatment is only for a symptomatic patient, and treat them like a PCOS subjects with the anti-androgens and E+P based on their requirement. anything new which is happening? Yes, lots of new things are happening in a CAH. We are getting a novel oral glucocorticoids. This is a Chronocort, which is given twice daily, trying to normalize the your 17-OHP better than the other agents. Continuous infusion can be tried based on the patient's affordability, and the newer therapies directed at CRH and also at the adrenal enzymes and the target tissues are available, but most of these trials are done in adults, not in young girls. But what is the ground reality? So this is what we know and we are learning from decades with many of the CMEs. The ground reality is entirely different. This is the one publication which we did last year in the June 2020. This is one of the PhD thesis of my student Vasanta Singarayan. She is an faculty in our nursing college. This got published in Journal of Family Medicine and Primary Care, wherein there was a interview of the 30 caretakers of children with a CAH. They were recruited by using purposive sampling technique, which is accepted across the globe, and the data were collected using a structured interview schedule. So they were classified according to their age and education, and you find that majority of the patients, more than 90% of the patients were literate. This is the most important. We involved the subjects who were more than 90% were literate, at least they have crossed the middle school. And children of all ages were there up to the 19 years. Even the knowledge scores of the caretakers were assessed based on the questionnaire. It was good knowledge was said when their questionnaire was answered more than 75%. Poor, it was less than 50%. And this was the most surprising thing for us. The knowledge about the CAH among caretakers was poor. Only 10% had a good knowledge. Rest of them didn't have a good knowledge. And the conclusion from our initial study, baseline study, and subsequently we are doing an intervention and we are publishing subsequently the results. Only 10% of parents of children with CAH had adequate knowledge for managing their children effectively. That's why we require a greater effort to increase the knowledge of the caretakers so that we can optimize the management and also the outcome. In the end, it is a teamwork. It is not just writing the prescription or getting the lab test done. I think we have to involve the family. We have to educate the family so that effective communication happens and the results becomes good, or else we'll end up like these two teams which have totally failed there in their work. To conclude, CAH is a complex and often a life-threatening disease, especially in the girls. Hormonal imbalance can result in a disease and a treatment-related adverse outcomes, which have been shown earlier. There are lots of recent advances have expanded our knowledge and also a treatment in this regard, but we require lots of advances to improve the therapy, knowledge, and outcome in the CAH girls. Thank you for your patient hearing.